Do you remember the last time that it was a really hot day and you felt like you were gonna melt? You probably said something like, oh my god, it's too hot today, to someone else, and then maybe had some ice cream to cool off. Well, animals underwater also feel hot, and they can also talk about it, just in a bit of a weirder way, through their pee, which is pretty cool. So their pee carries these chemical messages that are basically these tiny chemical signals in the water, because nature is super creative. And animals underwater rely heavily on their sense of smell. So they talk through these chemical messages in the water, and they'll listen by sensing these molecules with their noses or even tiny hairs in their bodies. And these smelly conversations can warn about predators, injuries, or danger. But we're also starting to understand and uncover that they can also communicate things that they can't directly see or that can't bite them, like temperature. So when the water around them warms up, their bodies react immediately. Because unlike us mammals or birds, most animals actually can't regulate their internal body temperature. So that means that they rely heavily on their surrounding environmental temperature to regulate their bodily functions. And the time that they're the most vulnerable and delicate to all of these changes in temperature is when they're babies or embryos. And here's why this matters. Making an animal is a lot like baking. So you can have all of the right ingredients ready to mix in a bowl, your proteins, your genes, your DNA, the whole cooking show. But if you bake it at the wrong temperature, you're not going to get a proper brownie. If it's too hot, it's going to burn. If it's too warm for too long, it's going to dry up, and so on. So you can follow a cake recipe using the same ingredients and the same quantities as your friend and still bake two very different cakes from each other, because there's things like variation in the oven temperature, for example, and this variation can mutate your cake. So the same thing happens when embryos develop in the wrong temperature. They can grow incorrectly or not at all. And these variations can lead to different outcomes, like different appearance, different behavior, or even the possibility of disease. And inside each of these tiny embryos, there's genes switching on and off like a control panel trying to respond. And they release these chemical messages as well that will drift through the water, telling others, hey, something's off. And even embryos that are perhaps not starting to feel hot yet might start to react. And so this heat wave can then indirectly spread through the whole community through these stress signals, like when you throw a rock in a pond and there's a ripple effect. And that's where my research comes in. I study how heat waves affect the earliest stages of life in a bunch of cool animals like fish, frogs, and gooey ones like marine ragworms. And I look at how their genes or their brownie ingredients react, how their behavior changes, and how they warn each other through these chemical signals in the water. Because even the tiniest creatures are already responding to our warming world, and they're sending messages that we can learn from. We just need to listen, and we need to pay attention.